What happens when a late-night television host decides to ambush a member of the British royal family with questions they never agreed to answer? Well, you're about to find out, and trust me, this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about media manipulation and the lengths some hosts will go to for ratings. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this tale of betrayal and calculated cruelty is unlike anything you've heard before. Prince Harry walked onto The Late Show with Stephen Colbert's stage that evening expecting a standard promotional interview. His publicist had been crystal clear about the parameters. They would discuss his upcoming charity work, perhaps touch on his life in California, and keep things light and positive. The agreed-upon topics were written down, signed off on, and everyone was supposedly on the same page. Harry had even cracked a few jokes with the production staff backstage, feeling relaxed and optimistic about the conversation ahead. But Stephen Colbert had other plans entirely. The moment the cameras started rolling, Colbert's demeanor shifted from the warm, welcoming persona he had displayed during their brief pre-show chat to something far more calculating and predatory. His smile became sharp. His eyes took on a gleam that Harry would later describe as unsettling, and his voice carried an undertone that immediately put the prince on edge. "So, Harry," Colbert began, leaning forward in his chair with that trademark grin that suddenly felt more like a weapon than a welcome, "let's talk about what really brought you here tonight. I mean, we both know this isn't actually about your charity work, is it?" Harry blinked, caught completely off guard by the aggressive opener. This wasn't what they had discussed. This wasn't what had been agreed upon. He glanced quickly toward the wings where his publicist stood, but she looked just as confused and concerned as he felt. "Actually, Stephen, I thought we were here to discuss the Invictus Games and the new initiatives we're launching," Harry replied, trying to maintain his composure while internally scrambling to understand what was happening. Colbert chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, come on, Harry. Let's be honest with the audience. You're here because your approval ratings have been in free fall. Your Netflix deals aren't performing as expected, and frankly, you need the publicity more than we need you on this show." The studio audience fell silent. This wasn't the playful banter they had expected. Even the crew members began exchanging worried glances as they realized they were witnessing something that felt more like an interrogation than an interview. Harry's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "I'm not sure where you're getting your information, Stephen, but I think there might be some confusion about why I'm here tonight." "No confusion at all," Colbert shot back, his voice growing more aggressive by the second. "Let me be very clear about something, Your Highness. This is my show in my studio, and I'll ask whatever questions I want to ask. Your people might have given you a list of approved topics, but I never agreed to stick to any script." The tension in the room was now palpable. Harry could feel his heart rate increasing, not from fear, but from a growing sense of anger at being deliberately misled and publicly ambushed. He had been in challenging interviews before, had faced difficult questions from seasoned journalists, but this felt different. This felt personal and malicious. "Stephen, I came here in good faith," Harry said, his voice beginning to carry a warning edge. "If you want to have a real conversation, I'm happy to do that. But if you're looking to create some kind of spectacle for your ratings, then perhaps we should end this right now." Colbert's grin widened, and Harry realized with a sinking feeling that this was exactly the reaction the host had been hoping for. "Oh, we're just getting started, Harry. See, I've been doing some research, and I have some questions that I think the American people deserve answers to." "What kind of questions?" Harry asked, though he was already beginning to suspect that whatever Colbert had planned would cross every line of decency and respect. "Well, for starters," Colbert said, pulling out a stack of note cards with theatrical flair, "let's talk about how you've made a career out of trashing your own family, while simultaneously profiting from the very titles and connections you claim to despise." Harry felt the blood drain from his face. This was beyond anything he had prepared for, beyond anything that any reasonable person would consider appropriate for a television interview. That's not what happened, and that's not what this conversation was supposed to be about. But it's what I want to talk about, Colbert replied with mock innocence. This is America, Harry. We believe in free speech here, and I have the right to ask whatever questions I want. Unless, of course, you think your royal status gives you some kind of special protection from accountability. The audience was now completely silent, sensing that they were witnessing something uncomfortable and potentially explosive. Some looked confused, others appeared concerned, and a few seemed to be enjoying the unexpected drama unfolding before them. Harry took a deep breath, trying to center himself and figure out how to navigate this ambush without losing his temper completely. But Colbert wasn't finished. I mean, let's be honest about what you've done, the host continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy. You've spent years now publicly humiliating your father, your brother, and your grandmother's memory, all while cashing in on tell-all books and Netflix specials. How do you reconcile that with your claims of wanting privacy and a normal life? That was the moment when Harry realized that Stephen Colbert hadn't just abandoned the agreed-upon interview format, he had deliberately planned this attack from the beginning. The charity work, the positive messaging, the friendly pre-show chat, it had all been a setup designed to get Harry comfortable and unsuspecting before launching into what was essentially a character assassination disguised as an interview. You know what, Stephen? Harry said, his voice now carrying a dangerous quiet that anyone who knew him would recognize as a warning sign. I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what kind of conversation we were going to have tonight. Colbert seemed to sense that he had pushed Harry to a breaking point, but instead of backing down, he doubled down with even more vicious intensity. Oh, did I hit a nerve there, Your Highness? I'm sorry. Should I have asked permission from the palace before asking you to explain your own actions? Harry's hands clenched into fists on the armrests of his chair, but his voice remained controlled, though everyone in the studio could hear the steel beneath his words. Stephen, you're being deliberately provocative and dishonest. You know exactly what you're doing, and it has nothing to do with journalism or entertainment. Dishonest? Colbert laughed, but it was a cold, calculated sound. I'm being dishonest? That's rich coming from someone who sat with Oprah and made claims about his family that he knew would be broadcast to millions of people around the world. But somehow, me asking you direct questions about those same claims is dishonest? The audience was now completely captivated by the unfolding drama, but many looked uncomfortable with the aggressive tone Colbert was taking. Some were whispering to each other, clearly questioning whether this was appropriate television. Harry leaned forward, his eyes locking with Colbert's. The difference, Stephen, is that Oprah conducted herself with professionalism and respect. She asked difficult questions, yes, but she didn't ambush me with lies and deliberate mischaracterizations. You're not interested in the truth. You're interested in creating a spectacle. A spectacle? Colbert's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Harry, you've been creating spectacles for years now. The Oprah interview, the Netflix series, the book, the constant interviews where you air your family's private business. And now you're upset because someone is asking you to account for all of that? I'm upset because you lied to me and my team about what this interview would be, Harry shot back, his composure finally beginning to crack. You deliberately deceived us to get me here under false pretenses so you could ambush me on live television. That's not journalism, that's manipulation. Colbert's mask of fake concern slipped for just a moment, revealing something much colder underneath. Welcome to American television, Harry. Maybe things work differently in your little royal bubble, but here in the real world, we don't bow down to princes who think they can control the narrative. This has nothing to do with being a prince, Harry replied, his voice rising slightly. This has to do with basic human decency and professional integrity, things you seem to have forgotten in your quest for ratings. Ratings? Colbert laughed. Again, and this time there was genuine malice in the sound. Oh, Harry, you really don't understand how this works, do you? The ratings for this show are going to be through the roof. And do you know why? Because people are tired of your victim act. They're tired of watching you play the poor, misunderstood prince while you trash the very institution that gave you everything you have. The words hit Harry like physical blows, and for the first time since the interview began, he looked genuinely shaken. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Colbert leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying Harry's discomfort. Let me tell you what I see, Harry. I see a man who had everything handed to him on a silver platter, who was loved and respected by millions of people, and who threw it all away because he couldn't handle the responsibilities that came with his privilege. That's not true, Harry said, but his voice lacked its earlier strength. Isn't it? Colbert pressed on relentlessly. You had a beautiful wedding watched by billions. You had meaningful work with veterans and charities. You had the love and support of your family, and you threw it all away. And now you want sympathy for the consequences of your own choices? Harry stood up abruptly, causing his chair to scrape loudly against the floor. The sudden movement sent a ripple of tension through the studio audience, and several crew members took a step forward, unsure of what was about to happen. Stephen, this interview is over, Harry said, his voice now carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who had been raised to command respect. I will not sit here and be subjected to your deliberate lies and character assassination. But Colbert wasn't finished. Sit down, Harry, he said, his voice taking on a mocking tone that was clearly designed to provoke. We're not done here. You came on my show, and you'll leave when I say you can leave. The audacity of the statement stunned everyone in the studio. Even some of Colbert's own crew members looked shocked at their host's behavior. Harry, however, felt something snap inside him. Excuse me? Harry's voice was dangerously quiet now, and anyone who knew him well would have recognized the warning signs. Did you just tell me that I can't leave your show when I choose to? Colbert's grin widened, clearly pleased with the reaction he was getting. That's exactly what I told you. You agreed to be here, you signed the contracts, and you'll fulfill your obligations. Unless, of course, you want to add breaking contracts to your list of character flaws. I signed a contract for a promotional interview about charity work, Harry replied, his voice growing stronger with each word. I did not sign up to be publicly humiliated by a talk show host who apparently thinks ambushing guests is acceptable behavior. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Colbert said, pulling out a piece of paper with theatrical flair. The contract you signed gives me editorial control over the content of this interview. I can ask whatever questions I want, and you agreed to answer them. Harry felt his blood pressure rising as he realized the full extent of Colbert's manipulation. You're telling me that you deliberately misled my team about the nature of this interview, got me here under false pretenses, and now you're claiming legal authority to keep me here against my will. I'm not claiming anything, Colbert replied, with false innocence. I'm simply exercising my rights under the contract that your people signed. But hey, if you want to walk out and break your legal obligations, that's your choice. Just know that it will be all over the news tomorrow. The threat was clear, and Harry realized that Colbert had planned this entire scenario from the beginning. The host had deliberately created a situation where Harry would either have to submit to public humiliation or face negative publicity for walking out. You know what, Stephen? Harry said, his voice now carrying a cold fury that made several people in the studio take an involuntary step back. I think the American people deserve to know exactly what kind of person you really are. Harry turned to face the studio audience directly, his voice carrying the kind of commanding presence that reminded everyone exactly who he was and what he represented. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand what's happening here tonight. Your host deliberately lied to me and my team to get me onto this stage. He promised a conversation about charity work and instead planned this character assassination from the very beginning. Colbert's face flushed red as he realized Harry was turning the tables on him. Harry, sit down and stop grandstanding. This is my show, not your personal platform. Your show? Harry turned back to face Colbert, and his voice carried a dangerous edge that made the host visibly uncomfortable for the first time all evening. Stephen, this might be your show, but these are real people in your audience, and they deserve to know the truth about how you operate. The audience was now completely riveted, some nodding in agreement with Harry's words, others looking shocked at the unprecedented confrontation unfolding before them. Colbert tried to regain control of the situation. The truth is that you're having a meltdown on live television because someone finally asked you tough questions instead of letting you control the narrative. Tough questions? Harry's voice rose, and for the first time his famous composure completely cracked. Stephen, you haven't asked me a single legitimate question tonight. You've made false accusations, twisted facts, and deliberately tried to provoke me into exactly this kind of reaction so you could use it for your own gain. I'm trying to hold you accountable, Colbert shot back, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Accountable? Harry's laugh was bitter and filled with years of pent-up frustration. You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about how you built your entire career on mocking and attacking people while hiding behind the excuse of comedy. Let's talk about how you use your platform to bully and humiliate guests who come here in good faith. The studio fell, silent except for the sound of cameras continuing to roll. Even the crew members had stopped moving, transfixed by the raw emotion and anger pouring out of the usually controlled prince. Colbert's mask of superiority was beginning to slip. "You're out of line, Harry." "I'm out of line?" Harry's voice exploded with fury. "You ambushed me with lies, tried to trap me with fake contracts, and have spent the last 20 minutes trying to destroy my reputation on live television, and I'm out of line for calling you out on it. This is how interviews work in America," Colbert stammered, clearly rattled by Harry's passionate response. "No, Stephen, this is how your interviews work," Harry fired back. "This is how cowards who hide behind desks and use their power to attack people who can't fight back on equal terms operate. You're not a journalist, you're not even a comedian anymore. You're just a bully with a television show." The words hit Colbert like physical blows, and for the first time all evening, he looked genuinely shaken. Several audience members began to murmur their agreement with Harry's assessment. "You don't know what you're talking about," Colbert said weakly. "Don't I?" Harry stepped closer to Colbert's desk, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried throughout the entire studio. "I know exactly what kind of person you are, Stephen. You're the kind of person who invites someone into your home, promises them a friendly conversation, and then stabs them in the back the moment the cameras start rolling." Colbert tried to interrupt, but Harry wasn't finished. "You're the kind of person who thinks that having a television show gives you the right to treat other human beings like entertainment for your audience. You're the kind of person who builds his career on the pain and humiliation of others, and then calls it comedy." The studio was now completely silent, with everyone hanging on Harry's every word. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether they should continue filming or stop. "And you know what the saddest part is, Stephen?" Harry continued, his voice now carrying a note of genuine sadness beneath the anger. "You used to be better than this. You used to be someone who could ask difficult questions while still treating your guests with basic human dignity. But somewhere along the way, you decided that ratings were more important than respect, and shock value was more important than integrity." Colbert's face had gone pale, and he seemed to be struggling to find words to defend himself. Harry straightened up and looked directly into the main camera. "To everyone watching at home, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. Stephen Colbert has shown you exactly who he is tonight." He turned back to Colbert one final time. "And as for your contract, Stephen, I suggest you have your lawyers take a very close look at the fraud and misrepresentation clauses, because what you've done here tonight isn't just unethical, it's illegal." With that, Harry removed his microphone, placed it carefully on Colbert's desk, and began walking toward the exit. The studio remained in stunned silence as the prince made his way off the stage, with his head held high and his dignity intact. Colbert sat frozen in his chair, clearly realizing that his attempt to humiliate Harry had backfired spectacularly. The audience began to whisper among themselves, many looking disgusted with their host's behavior. As Harry reached the wings, he turned back one last time and addressed the audience directly. "Thank you for witnessing the truth tonight. Sometimes the most important conversations happen when someone finally says enough is enough." The cameras continued to roll as Harry disappeared from view, leaving behind a studio full of people who had just witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in late-night television history. Colbert sat alone at his desk, the silence stretching on as he realized that his calculated attack had not only failed, but had exposed him as exactly the kind of person Harry had accused him of being. The evening had started as what Colbert thought would be easy ratings gold, but it ended with the host's reputation in tatters, and Harry walking away as the clear victor in a battle that Colbert himself had chosen to start. What did you think of this incredible confrontation? Does this change how you view late-night television and the way hosts treat their guests? Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments below what you think really motivated Stephen Colbert's shocking behavior that night.